Welcome to the Hub Legal Department. I'm going to show you and share with you evidence of criminal collusion between the Queensland Police Service and Queensland Health, and also the Brisbane City Council, BCC. This is the document that I was given after I'd been locked up on the 13th of January this year. 6 men came to my house together. 2 from the Brisbane City Council, who were named Jacob Mead and Chris Carey. The other 2, the next 2 who came and spoke to me, were 2 Scottish men from the PA hospital. One was Steve Crawford, who was wearing glasses and a mask and didn't want to be identified, so he just said he's a nurse from the PA. I know this guy well. He's abducted me lots and lots of times. So the other one was Ken Craig, who's also Scottish, and they told me that they were going to take me back to the hospital immediately after I was given what they called enforcement order. I didn't even get a chance to read it. I was told I have a couple of minutes to get my pajamas and a toothbrush. I didn't get my pajamas and a toothbrush. I brought some work and evidence. So this report is signed by Paul Northway. However, the author of the report is his registrar, Alana Rowan, who I had never met. She never met me. She based her report on what was in the charts, which is an endlessly repeated false narrative. It's defamatory and libelous and illegal. So Paul Northway is the consultant, and I had also never met Kenneth Craig, who called himself my case manager. Registrar Medical Officer Alana Rowan, and I met her. They're saying that I had paranoid schizophrenia and mental and behavioral disorders due to the use of cannabinoids, dependence syndrome, primary and secondary. It's very obvious that I don't have paranoid schizophrenia. He wrote that I had an unkempt appearance with untidy hair and rumple-stained attire. If you see any of my clips, you can see that my stained attire was due to drooling, hypersalivation, or siluria, which is caused by the drugs that these turds injected me with for years. Under the charge of what they call a case manager, who was Nigel Lewin, an English guy, overweight English guy, and he's the chairman of the Arch, a very suspect charity of the Catholic Church, the French Catholic Church, founded by a guy called Jean Billier, who was a Catholic layman. They were lining him up for a sainthood, but when he died, it turned out that he was sexually molesting his staff. Now, he writes that I was expressing a number of beliefs that are unconventional. What's wrong with unconventional thinking and ideas? There isn't. He also queried whether I had Parkinson's disease. The PA hospital was trying to make out that the neurological problem that I developed was idiopathic Parkinson's disease rather than toxicity from the drugs. They make it pretty obvious from their reports. So, mental state examination, short stature man of Sri Lankan ancestry, unkempt appearance with untidy hair and unrumpled stained attire, cooperated with review, with good eye contact, friendly manner despite content of discussion, bradykinetic faces, bilateral hand tremor, no irritability, suspiciousness or lability, affect restriction in intensity. The affect is the demonstration of your emotion, but warmth, humor and reactivity preserved, thought stream and form normal. Now, the crux of the matter is this. I've written a plot by Collins and Company, Tony Collins, the Maruko station, police station boss. I've written addendum. Firstly, they say it's unclear whether his movement difficulties represent EPSE. EPSE is extrapyramidal side effects from the drugs, but they don't mention it, or an underlying neurological condition. He has engaged in past disruptive behavior, such as playing his music too loud. It's not a sign of mental illness, is it? I've written, they complain about my original music but not chainsaws. And then, this is the key, addendum, communication received from police liaison, 20th of July, 2022, last year, that police had requested that Dr. Senibiratne remain under the care of MHS, the mental health system, now being cared by them, as a public health order was to be executed, and this could potentially have a destabilizing effect on his mental health. Then, I'll get back to that. There's more here. The local council has applied for an enforcement order to undertake certain activities at his place of residence. He is likely to oppose these interventions, and police anticipate becoming involved. These works are planned to commence on 16 January 2023. 16th January 2023, they locked me up on the 13th and kept me there for a week while they plundered and destroyed my land and my business. Stole a Buddha statue, bulldozed all my frog ponds, sealed off my taps, stole my collection of seeds, seed pods and bark from the front veranda of the house, which they denied. I had 10 Woolworths bags full of these very valuable seeds that I had in fact said that they're $1 million seeds of Royal Poinciana, and they stole them all. Bark that I've been collecting, paper bark, melaleuca, for my art, and also stock for my business. They stole all of it that I've been collecting for more than 5 years and storing them on my veranda. So police anticipate becoming involved. Indeed, they were involved. They conspired. The cops who came to my house with the city council enforcer and investigator and the two Scottish guys were Chris Bell and Chris Pratt. Pratt is a very well known name in Melbourne because of the Pratt family. a millionaire Jewish family that owned Wisely Recycling. The city council contracted Remondis. I found that out from Chris Carey. I rang Remondis, the Queensland branch, a guy called I forget his name, I'll remember it. Ali. That was his Ishraq Ali. He's the Queensland manager of Remondis, which is a German waste company, waste and recycling. And they're the people who were in charge of the job that was given to the city council. They are implicated in Nazi atrocities as well, as I have explained. So they also, after locking me up and telling me that I would be going home the next day they came and said they couldn't send me home because they'd found asbestos. Then they came the next day and said I still couldn't go home because it had started raining and they can't dispose of the asbestos in the rain. That is illegal, obviously. So, there you have it again. In July, police requested that MHS remain involved with Dr. Seniviratne, given the application for an enforcement order. It is possible that the enforcement order may precipitate a deterioration in mental condition, and maintenance of the TA, Treatment Authority, was considered warranted in view of this potential to enable and expedite further review in the event of a reported or suspected deterioration. I also say he does not demonstrate sufficient understanding of and insight into his condition to have capacity to consent to treatment. They don't say a single nice thing about me, but they also don't acknowledge that I have recorded music albums and books, written books. In fact, they say that, I'll show you, also acknowledge that his mentions of having 14,000 connections on LinkedIn, which include the president of the RANZCP, that's the Royal College of Psychiatrists, Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists, and previous Attorney General, typographic, and his authorship of books can also be interpreted by others as grandiose. They may be interpreted by others as grandiose, but they were not grandiose, because I did have over 14,000 connections on LinkedIn. Now I've got 14,800. I don't spend a lot of time making connections on LinkedIn anymore, but I did a few years ago. I was also had LinkedIn connection with not a previous Attorney General, she is now a previous Attorney General, but at the time, Shannon Fentiman, who is one of my LinkedIn connections, was indeed the Attorney General. I also had a LinkedIn connection with the Chief of the Attorney General's Department. They call it JAG, Justice and Attorney General's Department. And his authorship of books can be interpreted by others as grandiose. What I said is that the author, my making a claim to have written books, was misinterpreted as grandiose, because I have written books. I've written several books, and they could have checked that quite easily by going online and looking for it. But they didn't want to look for evidence of sanity. If you look at this, Dr. Seniviratne had some contact with his mother. My mother had been put in a nursing home by my sister, who's the person who arranged for this horrible crime against me. The 16th of January, when they did it, when they started plundering my garden, happens to be my father's 91st birthday, or was. He claims an extensive LinkedIn network. He occupies himself with building his online network and actively engages in disseminating information critical of the current mental health system. I've been writing completely egocentric, these egocentric people. I have been writing, criticizing the psychiatry system, not just in Australia but around the world, but particularly in Australia, because that's what I have experience of and the most knowledge about. I've been writing about it for 27 years. And of course, I do a lot of other things apart from occupying myself building my online network. I don't do anything of the sort. It's a very small proportion of what I do. Now, Dr. Seniratne lives in a property which belongs to his mother. My mother wrote 2 letters to the council in 2016 after my father had got her to write that the house is occupied by a mentally disturbed squatter. My mother wrote to the council saying I was not a mentally disturbed squatter, I was his son. She had no intention of evicting me and was transferring the title deeds of the house over to me. My sister talked her out of it. When my parents got the settlement, my mother got her share of the settlement of their property. It was a big property, 10 acres, but 7 acres were taken over by the council. And they sold 3 acres and built about 12 townhouses there in Carina Heights. My sister opened a joint bank account with my mother, stopped her from giving any money to me, and then put her in a nursing home after my father kicked her out of the house so that his mistress, Joyce Archong, with whom he has a daughter, or Naomi Archong, also a doctor, he kicked my mother out of the house. My sister put her in a nursing home. I also have evidence, photographs of my mother with black eyes, 1 black eye and 2 black eyes, which she told me came from just falling down. But they're not. I'm quite certain that it's because my father, who was a boxer, had been punching her. My sister has been repairing the injuries herself, which is a plastic surgeon. But that also defends, she doesn't want people to know that my father was assaulting our mother, or our father was assaulting our mother. And it so happens, again it's not a coincidence, both my sister and my father worked for many years at this hospital, the PA hospital. I'll leave you with the last one. Dr. Seniratne has a past history of naming and shaming on staff on social media, which has led to intervention by the CFOS. They didn't intervene. They tried to. It's a forensic team on the BA. There is significant risk he presents to reputation of those involved in his care. This remains the current risk. While there is no reported past history of suicidal attempt or deliberate self-harm. I've written, what about my reputation? They don't care about it, of course. They only care about themselves. I'll leave it there. I'm going to present evidence of these crimes. I'm going to present evidence of these crimes. I've got a lot more. This is just one more. Dr. Senratne reported. Who reported? Let's see. In response, this is 2015, they locked me up on my birthday, on 22nd September, my 55th birthday, for 2 months and destroyed my business again by my parents, or my father and sister actually. My mother was forced to comply with them. Admission to Princess Alexandra Hospital, West Wing, readmitted on authority return issued after home visit by community psychiatrist. That was a lie. There was no community psychiatrist. It's the police who took me away. In response to complaints made by neighbors, they don't say who it was. I know who it was because I've got a copy of his spy notes. Jeff Miller, 74 Vegan Drive. There's no coincidence that the person who's hacking my data, which is obvious because the Apple Maps, instead of showing my location at 76 Vegan Drive, showed 74 Vegan Drive. Despite me changing it over and over again, he kept reverting to 74 Vegan Drive. That's the home of Jeff Miller. Jeff Miller reported that I was verbally abusive, threatening, walking with a knife in hand, flooding the garden and overflowing neighbor's garden, and several behavioral abnormalities. They increased the paliperidone that I've been crippled by. It's Belgian drug company, Janssen, now owned by Johnson & Johnson. So, if you look up the evidence against Jeff Miller on my Scribd site, Jeff and Heidi Miller, you'll see the notes that he wrote. He wrote them for a month, making notes about my behavior before he made the false report. The false report was actually to a guy called Nick Giunta, cop, a heavily tattooed Italian cop. And Nick Giunta had conferred with Miller, but Miller had also conferred with Col Griffiths, who was the father of Steve Griffiths, the local councillor, Maruka councillor. I asked one of the cops, a woman called Melissa Rogers, who came to take me away, if she knew Col Griffiths, and she did. So Miller claimed that I was hacking at a tree in order to intimidate him. I was hacking with what appeared to be a meat cleaver. It was actually a little piece of glass mirror that I was carefully peeling bark off the tree for my art. A paperback tree. So Miller claimed that I was slashing at a tree in order to intimidate him, and he was scared that I'd run across the road and stab him because I hate him so much, because he has reported me many times because of my behavior